The Mariners have a JP Crawford problem. I'm recording this on Festivus, December 23rd, 2025, and I am ready to air some grievances. All right, I'm promising you now, if you don't understand the Festivus reference, that's the last reference to it. I'm Casey McLean. I'm the host of the Poor Sports Seattle podcast, and I don't do this very often. But at the beginning, I want to tell you, I'm doing some shows in the Pacific Northwest this weekend. I'm opening for my buddy Josh Firestein at Tacoma Comedy Club 6th and Proctor location. So come on out to that. Tickets are at tacomacomedyclub.com. The Mariners have a JP Crawford problem. I'm a big JP Crawford fan. I'll start by saying that. When he came out in the draft, he was the cousin of Carl Crawford, a guy that I always liked when he played for Tampa Bay, and a guy who I always felt like would eventually end up playing for the Mariners, but did not. And then his cousin came out, and I always thought Carl Crawford, one of the things about Carl Crawford that bothered me, and I'll say it bothered me about Ichiro also. Carl Crawford seemed like a guy who could have handled center field very well, but didn't. He played left field the vast majority of his career. I'm not going to go look and see how much time he spent in center field. He was a corner outfielder for the vast majority of his career. And I always thought that hampered his value a little bit. But JP Crawford, not only did he play a premium position, he played the premium defensive position. He was a shortstop. And in a time where on base became very important, became something people were very aware of, JP Crawford walked. He didn't strike out much. He hit for enough power to prop up the walk rate, and he played defense at shortstop that was considered to be adequate. I think most people had some questions about, because he's big for a shortstop, at least a traditional, if you're a super traditionalist. He's big for a shortstop, but a lot of people were worried he might end up having to move to second base, and he hasn't had to. He, to this point, or I should say, up to a point in his career, was a very good defensive shortstop. But let's talk about who JP Crawford is now and who he was in 2025. JP Crawford in 2025 had 113 WRC plus. And beginning of the season, it was like JP Crawford was borderline an MVP candidate, frankly. A shortstop with a 132 WRC plus in the first half of the season. And I think it began to taper off a little bit before the end of the first half. I think he was in the 150s at one point. And JP Crawford's a very good hitter. I want that to be the most clear thing to come out of this part of this. JP Crawford is a very good hitter. We're going to talk about what the future holds for JP Crawford. I'm going to quantify later how good of a hitter JP Crawford is. The fact that he's this good and has played shortstop for this long, that's amazing. JP Crawford has been a very good Major League Baseball player. But last year he played 157 games at shortstop. He's in his 30s. We might be reaching a point where JP Crawford should not be. I'm not saying might. We have reached the point. JP Crawford should not be an everyday shortstop in Major League Baseball anymore. He played 157 games there last year. That's taxing. That's a lot of games for a guy to play. Were his second half struggles because he was tired? He was worn out? Were they because he's a new dad and children are exhausting? I can attest to this. Maybe. I think it's probably multifactorial, but the reality is JP Crawford, it pains me to say this, JP Crawford should not be playing shortstop in Major League Baseball anymore. Last year, JP Crawford ranked 31 of 33 shortstops. I think it was with 500 innings or more. That's on StatCast. 31 of 33 shortstops in defensive value in 2025. And the guys at the bottom of the list are notoriously bad. JP Crawford is one of the worst defensive shortstops in baseball. And there was a point in his career where he was very good. He won a Gold Glove. I don't necessarily think that awards are a perfect metric for who is good and who is bad. He was statistically better early in his career, but not recently. In the last 3 years, shortstops with 1,000 innings or more, 38th of 39 shortstops. He's ranked 38th among 39 shortstop with 1,000 innings or more. The only guy stopping him from being in the bottom spot is just how bad C.J. Abrams has been. C.J. Abrams should have been not a shortstop a long time ago. He is very bad. By the way, also very bad, and on that list is Bo Bichette, who remains a free agent as I record this. And that may turn my head a little bit on what a Bo Bichette contract, how I would feel about a Bo Bichette contract. That is certainly not coming from the Mariners, but that might change my opinion on how I would feel about it. The time has come. It's over for JP Crawford at shortstop. The Mariners have one of the worst defenses in baseball, and JP Crawford is one of the major contributors to how bad the defense is. All the conversation about Jose Ferrer is this guy that has, this great ground ball rate. It's going to play so well in T-Mobile Park. Not if your infield defense sucks. So, the question is, what should the Mariners do? Start with this. Let's talk about what they could do with JP Crawford. I mean, I think there's a very good chance that if you trade him, it hurts your 2026 roster. And I don't think they should be trying to hurt the 2026 roster with a trade. That's I will say that's, as I may be advocating for a Luis Castillo trade, if there was one on the table. The Mariners have said they're not going to do that, but I would advocate for it because his salary is enough that money could make a difference. It could, the way the Mariners could spend the money that they would otherwise spend on Luis Castillo is they could probably outpace Castillo's production. But Crawford isn't making that much money. He's younger. Frankly, he's better. He's still a very good hitter. I said I was going to tell you how good he is, give you some quantification. JP Crawford plays shortstop. This may be surprising. Even with his bad second half, he would have ranked about 15th among first basemen in WRC+. So, if you were going to, it's moot now. But had the Mariners not signed Josh Naylor, JP Crawford might have been a good option to move over to first base. First off, he's taller than Josh Naylor. He doesn't seem like a conventional first baseman. He's not built like a first baseman. But it's what I'm telling you, the bat is good enough. If the defense would play, and I would suspect a guy that can handle shortstop to some degree, and I want to make this clear. It's not like JP Crawford's glove is bad. He has no range. We saw it in the playoffs. We saw it all season. The statistics bear it out. JP Crawford has no range. Which that creates a challenge also. Because it's not a guy that doesn't have the arm for shortstop. It's a guy that doesn't have the range. So moving him to second base, in a vacuum, moving him to second base is tough. Maybe doesn't solve the problem. I will also say, among shortstop, JP Crawford has one of the worst arms. So a move to third base may make some sense, except for, I think is among third basemen last year with, I want to say it was like 100 throws. I can't remember what the criteria I set was. He's like second worst in max velocity and, towards the bottom in average velocity if you move his shortstop numbers over to third base. Obviously, that's not how things happen. But guys are making full speed throws. I can understand looking at a second baseman and going, that guy's not really ever reaching back for everything because it's a shorter throw. Not true at shortstop. Those guys are reaching back for everything. And JP Crawford has a weak arm for a left side of the infielder. So moving him to third base, I don't think really makes a ton of sense. I think it maybe mitigates the range issues while exacerbating the weak arm. Moving him to second base, there's problems. You have Cole Young there. So, will the range problems be solved by moving him to second base? Not clear. So, then you look at JP Crawford and you go, well, he's a really smart player, high IQ player. He could probably take an off season to learn to play left field, not fast anymore. It's so where you get to with JP Crawford is he a first baseman, second baseman, left fielder, maybe, but probably not, or DH? And if he's a DH, and if he's DH only, I think the Mariners are going to play him at shortstop. I want to make that clear. Until Colt Emerson's ready. And then even then, depending on how Ben Williamson's doing and how Cole Young's doing, it's possible. I would be totally okay, by the way, if you get to the point where Colt Emerson is available, move JP to second base, move Colt Emerson to shortstop, figure out what to do with Cole Young later. But if Cole Young's playing well, and he's a better defensive second baseman, maybe, if Ben Williamson is anything, and he's a good defensive third baseman, and Colt Emerson is on the roster, has been called up, I don't know where you play JP. He's a defensive liability at this point in his career. But like I said, he would make a good offensive first baseman. And we saw the Mets already take on Jorge Polanco, who I mean, admittedly had significantly better power numbers than JP Crawford's ever had, but they're going to use him as part of their first base solution, part of their Pete Alonso replacement. Teams are getting a little more inventive how they handle first base. In fact, it's I will say this is part of the reason why I was a little bit skeptical of re-signing Josh Naylor is now the Mariners have a bunch of DH only guys who should be DH only. Those guys, Harry Ford was one of them. He's gone. Randy Arozarena is one of them. He's still here. JP Crawford's probably one of them on this roster, unless you can find a way to play him at second base. He's still here. Where do you add offense now? Because you have two guys that should probably be DH only. You probably want to add defense at this point. And if you're going to add defense, it's hard to do. In this free agent class, it's hard to do. Obviously, they could go sign Alex Bregman, have him play third base. That improves your situation quite a bit. Maybe even to a degree mitigates the JP Crawford problem because it shores up the left side of the infield a little bit. Some of the balls that JP Crawford maybe doesn't get to, Alex Bregman does. Maybe. At least on average. Maybe it's not like some Venn diagram, but there's the aggregate of the left side of the infield improves if you get a better defensive third baseman. But if you think the Mariners are going to spend like that, I think you're wrong. We can want that every offseason. But if we're going to live in the confines of reality, it's probably not going to happen. Maybe Bo Bichette is a decent third baseman. Again, he's not a better shortstop, not a significantly better shortstop. There's not an obvious, in my opinion, shortstop upgrade waiting for the Mariners to sign. I recorded a version of this video earlier in the offseason where I talked about Ha-Seong Kim. I wouldn't have wanted, I think he got $20 million a year. I wouldn't have wanted that. So I have an option. I have an idea of a guy who let JP be a placeholder at shortstop for now. Fine. Not happy with it, but fine. Let him spell whoever your DH is sometimes. Fine. But you want a guy who is a better defensive shortstop than JP Crawford, but who doesn't block Colt Emerson. I don't think you want to go sign, let's say Bo Bichette was a better defensive player. That's a different story. But I don't think you want to go sign a 3 or 4 year contract with a shortstop. There's this guy named Willie Castro. Played for the Minnesota Twins, played for the Chicago Cubs. I believe he was traded to the Cubs last year. He's been about a league average bat this whole career. Switch hitter. Last year he hit lefties a lot better than righties, which is something the Mariners need. But he's about an even platoon split. But he's also played second base, shortstop, third base, left field, center field, and right field. All 500 or more innings in his career. And in those innings, in that super utility guy that he has been. He's been about a league average defender at second base, shortstop, third base. You bring in Willie Castro. You're probably not looking at a guy that's going to get 650 plate appearances in a season. But what you are looking at a guy who's a contingency plan for a lot of doubt. And I support the Mariners letting Cole Young develop. I support them weathering Colt Emerson potentially coming up and having some growing pains. Frankly, I support them giving Ben Williamson every chance to win the starting third base job. But not in this stage can I accept those guys with no net, with no contingency plan. I've heard people talk about how the Mariners they got to add 2 bats. They have to. There's no choice. They have to add 2 bats. And that, by the way, I mean, Rob Ruffsnyder, I think actually probably qualifies as a bat as I think out of left field as that signing seemed. I do think he qualifies. Guy that just absolutely mashes lefties. A guy that's like a perfect complement to what the Mariners have in their starting lineup. That could be it, though. That could be it. And if it's it, I think that a non-sexy, very useful signing would be to go sign Willie Castro to be the safety net for all 3 of those positions. The Mariners are in win now mode because they are winning now. And they should not be, punting a season so Colt Emerson can develop. Absolutely not. They should not be punting a season so they can see what they have in Ben Williamson. No. Of course they can trade for players at the trade deadline. It's not a very efficient way to acquire talent. Trading is not a very efficient way to acquire talent because you still have to go pay that guy. And if you're trading for someone who's young and controllable, you probably got to give up a lot of prospects and pay that guy. Otherwise, I mean, obviously there's trade options out there that have been talked about, Brendan Donovan and Nico Horner, and maybe these guys make some sense, and if the deal is right, fine. But I think you get 75, 80, 90% of what you get from those guys from Willie Castro for significantly less money, and you don't have to give up any prospects. So that's what I would do. JP Crawford's days are numbered at shortstop. And if the Mariners are serious about contending in 2026, they got to find a way to take some innings away from him and give them to a better defender. And you'd love to do it in a way that respects and honors what JP Crawford has contributed to this franchise, because absolutely, big JP Crawford fan. But his time as a Major League shortstop is over.